He was known as an artist who invented new methods and styles of art. He had a very big influence on art from his lifetime up to the present. His most expensive painting was sold for $179 million. He One of his most famous quotes was, "All children are artists. The problem is how to remain an artist once he grows up." My name is Leila Perez, and today I'll be discussing Pablo Picasso's early life and his artistic career. When his real name contained 23 words, his long name came from saints and family members. He got his last name Picasso from his mother, he was born on October 25 of 1881 in Malaga, Spain. He was an only son with two younger sisters, Conchita and Lola. Picasso learned to draw so early on his life that he didn't remember when he did so. His mother said his first words was "Lapi." He was very talented, and his talent was nurtured by his father, who was an artist and a teacher. He moved to Barcelona with his family when his dad moved to a teaching position. Um, he, Even though he was a great artist, he was not very good in school. But for art, it was different. He was very devoted to it. Picasso was a well-trained young artist. In 1987, he began his studies at the Rio Academia de Bellas Artes, which at the time was Spain's top art academy. He also studied arts exhibits of Prado, and he studied paintings such as El Greco and other artists. According to PabloPicassos.org, he completed a painting of the First Communion of his sister at the age of 15. Also, Picasso in his teenage years was already a great painter, regardless of his age, and he was as good as older painters. In the 1900s, Picasso's life started to change. He moved to Paris, where he shared lodgings with a poet and a journalist who took him under his wing. Long before, Picasso moved to Madrid and partnered with Francisco Soler on a magazine called Young Art. When his first, when the first, when when the first issue came out, he began to sign his artwork as Picasso. Picasso had a blue and rose period. This blue period lasted from 1901 to 1904, and during this time he mainly painted in shades of blue. This period came after an apparent depression after a friend's suicide. The rose period lasted from 1904 to 1906, in which he mainly painted in rose and pink colors. He worked closely with Braque and developed what was known as analytical cubism. Early Early Cubist paintings were often misunderstood and thought to only be geometric art. Picasso's work, beginning on the 1909, were mostly about landscape from his trip to Madrid, and they were followed by in the 1910s with paintings of figures with sitting figures of playing instruments. His romantic partner of 7 years, Fernand Oliver, figured in many of his artistic Cubist work. In the 1912, Picasso's career changed and in a shift in style. In the wake of his first visit to Italy, the conclusion of World War I, his painting offered a change in contrast to his Cubist paintings. The watercolor peasant sleeping reflected a restoration of order in art. According to PabloPicasso.org, he began to reprise his penchant from Primitivism and Surrealist influence by Surrealist movement in the 1920s. Biography.com states that his two wives and love partners were inspiration to a few of his works. Eva was the subject to his painting Women with a Guitar in 1911, and Marie Theresa, with who he said his daughter, with who he had his daughter, inspired Bollard's Suite. In 1961, he married his second wife and last, and he proved to be and she proved to be one of his best career inspiration. Picasso produced more than 70 portraits of her during the final 17 years he was alive. During the era of 1949, he focused on sculpture. Pablo Picasso is a very well-known artist in, in the world and took pride in every piece of artwork he did. Ever since his early childhood, he had a very big passion for art. Picasso was a very successful man in his whole 91 years of life, and he continued to do what he loved until the day he died. He was most successful and the best artist of the 20th century. Picasso is one of the greatest and most influential artists of the 20th century and has one of the greatest influence on the course of the 20th century art. Pablo Picasso often mixed various styles of created new interpretation of what he saw. He was the force in the development of Cubism, and Picasso is not just a man of his work. He was one of the greatest artists of the 20th century.